Okay, it says the meeting is now streaming live on YouTube, so let's just find the stream on my channel. I'll go ahead and share screen. There we are. Okay. Let me jump into the chat. Live on YouTube.
Thank you.
So let's just find the stream on my channel. Hang on, I'm hearing an echo from myself. One sec.
Yeah.
There we are. Okay, now I should not hear an echo of myself. Hey, MY, great to see you here in the chat. Thanks for joining and stopping by. Great to have you here. Happy solstice, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everyone. Okay, we will go ahead and begin then. We'll give people just a second to start to jump in. If you're willing to hit that like button, that would be amazing. Helps the content circulate, everyone. Thank you. Welcome in, everyone. Hey, Gada. Great to have you here from Egypt. Thank you for joining. Awesome. Actually, let me adjust one thing on the visuals on my end. See if that helps things a bit. Hey, Goddess Deity. Great to have you here. Lovely. Okay. Awesome. All right, I'll go ahead and begin with the introduction. I know more people will continue to join. I'm very excited about this. This was something that I was really looking forward to being able to share with you guys. You're welcome. Great to have you here from Mexico, Maria. Hey, Jezebel 70. Great to have you here from Switzerland, Northwest Illinois. We've got the Americas, Europe, Africa here. Leah Taylor's hanging out in Jupiter, Florida. We've got some of the cosmos. Very lovely to have all of you. Thank you. So to everyone who's new to the channel, welcome. My name is Kay Moon and I'm a Western astrologer and twin flame channel. This video will provide an introduction to a very new and exciting technology called SCIO healing. SCIO, S-C-I-O, stands for Scientific Consciousness Interface Operation. And in a moment, we're going to see screenshot images of the machine itself, the operating program it uses on a computer, and the kind of healing and information it can provide to assist all of us in greater healing and in greater unity with self, union with source, and union in our divine counterpart connections. As a distance healing modality, SCIO work is designed to be done remotely, but the really neat thing about it that I love is that it works objectively and not subjectively. The filters of the human experience that impact perception of a healer and their work are removed as the SCIO picks up the energy without needing the human mind to perceive or translate the subtle energies. As we step more and more into the Aquarian energy of this next cycle, technologies like this that create an interface between the subtle energies of human intelligence and the work of mechanical technology will become more and more a part of our lives. Please note that SCIO healing work is not meant to replace the guidance and supervision of your medical team medical care or medical practitioners. So if you're under medical supervision for acute or chronic disorders, it's your responsibility to heed their guidance for your healing and treatment, and to not stop any prescribed course of treatment without their supervision and or permission. In today's interview, you're going to learn about how this technology can assist you in your connection, the types of work and healing the SCIO can provide, and you'll hear from two very special guests, Mikayla and Ella, very accomplished ladies, about how they work with the SCIO, specifically with twin souls. Mikayla is an energy healer, and she specializes in quantum biofeedback healing for twin flames. She completed her SCIO training with Ella, and in addition to this, she completed Eric Pagani's training modules on extrasensory perceptions and extrasensory power, also known as PSI, or scientific parapsychology. She applies this knowledge in this field to support spiritual awakening and growth, specifically for twin souls. Another part of her experience includes twin ring energy healing as taught by Charlotte from Happy Twins 1111. I'm hoping to have her on the channel at some point in January or February, sometime in the first quarter, to talk about this, so that we can learn more about how the twin connection works and the mechanics, the quantum mechanics of it. Mikayla owns an aesthetics business, and she also has a postgraduate diploma in management practice from the Henley School of Business. She's also a chartered management accountant, registered with the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants in the United Kingdom. Ella, our other special guest, comes from a very traditional medical background. Ella grew up in a family full of doctors and nurses, and she holds a bachelor's degree in general nursing, midwifery, community health nursing, and psychiatry. She also holds a degree in education and psychology. Her experience in the medical world spans over a very wide spectrum, including many years of intensive care nursing. 14 years ago, she was introduced to the SCIO and subsequently qualified as a SCIO therapist. And since then, she's been in private practice using the SCIO as her main modality to help clients successfully resolve anything from allergies to cancer to mental and emotional disturbances. She's had extensive training on the SCIO, most of it recognized by international specialists in the field. And over the last 3 years, her focus shifted to include more spiritual healing as a result of her own spiritual awakening. She's trained in energy healing, journey work, as well as spirit release therapy, and her focus is on holistic healing, spiritual, emotional, as well as physical. And as a twin soul herself, both of these are twin souls, her passion is to help twins heal themselves and live their soul's true purpose. I know, Ellie and Ben's world, both of these women are extraordinarily impressive in their background, their training, their qualifications, and their accomplishments. It's partly why I wanted to have them on, because we can sometimes find ourselves being introduced to new technology, and because they're not presently recognized by the traditional world of medical or therapeutic experience, that doesn't mean these things won't be recognized in the future. And it's due to the dedication of work by very accomplished scholars like these two that these therapies can be introduced to not only our world, but to the world at large. So thank you all for being here. I'm very excited to have you all and to share this work with you. Thank you, Ella and Mikayla, for joining us.
Thank you, Kay, for
Thank you,
having us.
Kay. Thank you.
It's very exciting to be with you, and we're looking forward to a fun night.
Yes.
Lots of
Or morning, depending on where you guys are at.
Exactly. Exactly. So I want to start with the first question. I'm really curious, what is the background of the SCIO? Like, how was this developed? What can it do? Give us, kind of an introduction of this piece of machinery and technology.
I think, Kay, probably the best way to start is way back in 1936. when there was a person by the name of Royal Rife, and he was a researcher, a medical researcher, and he was one day looking at cancer cells under his microscope. And in those days, a microscope used to use crystals to generate the light beam for you to be able to see what is under the microscope. And as he was working with this, he found every time he turned the crystals to a certain position, the cells under the microscope would die. And he kept repeating it and he kept having the same kind of results. And then he said to himself, but it can then only be the light beam that's killing these cells. And if that is the case, we'd better measure the frequency of this light beam because it has the potential to kill cancer cells, which he then did. And then found out that the frequency that he was generating with turning the crystals in a certain way was exactly the same as the frequency of whatever he had under his microscope. So that kind of was the whole starting point of frequency medicine, if we can call it that. And the SCIO is a follow up on that. So in those days, what he did is he then measured frequencies left, right, and center, all the pathogens and things that he could measure. But then came a guy by the name of Bill Nelson, and he's one of those really super intelligent people. So he worked at NASA at the age of 17, hand calculating landing places for the Apollos, then proceeded to get married. His wife fell pregnant and had some medication early in her pregnancy for nausea. And as a result of that, he had a child that was born with quite a lot of problems. So he said to himself, if this is what a simple little pill like a nausea pill can do to you, there has to be a better answer somewhere. And then he started looking and he found the work of Royal Rife, and he trained to be a medical practitioner. He trained to be a homeopath. So he has a wide range of training in the world of the metaphysics as well. And then he expanded on the work of Royal Rife and he started including anything that you can measure with a frequency. So, just about, and this is just about anything. If you think about a pen has a certain frequency, it's measurable, it's probably a short frequency because it's there and we can see it. But when we connect like we do tonight, our connections are simply frequency connections, but they're very fast, so we can't see them with our eyes. It doesn't mean that they're not there, though, they're still there. So, what he did is he measured physical items, emotional items, spiritual items, things like allergies, things like hormones. it's a, we've got just over 10,000 different items on the SKU that he's measured the frequencies of. He put it on a computer program. Our computer program is attached to a little box, and that's how the whole system starts working. So essentially, that's where the SKU comes from. That's the background of it. He was a Canadian guy. He got a lot of trouble in Canada because I think he was way ahead of his time. He developed it for the medical world, but the medical world didn't want to know anything about this. So he's since moved. He's in Romania at the moment, in Budapest. No, not Romania. He's in Budapest. Okay, so and he works from Budapest. The head office for the SKU is in Budapest, although they have spread quite sort of all over the globe. But that's basically where it comes from, and that's the background of the SKU. So it really comes from a place where there was someone who said that we need something that can work in a different way, that cannot be harmful to a person, but that yet has the potential to do the healing. So, in a nutshell, I think that's kind of your answer. This is where it comes from.
Beautiful. Yes, she is saying SCIO. We had a question from KL, and it's I'll just type it exactly as you have it, SCIO. So if you go back and listen to the introduction, I kind of map out what SCIO stands for, SCIO. But yes, that is that is a beautiful introduction, and it helps us understand and ground ourselves in the history of what the SCIO is and how it came to be. But then that leads us to you two. How did the two of you get involved with the SCIO?
I, I think since I've been involved with it longer, we'll start on my side. Kay, as a nurse, and particularly in difficult environments, I've always had this question: why is it that we repetitively admit the same people? Particularly in the pediatric ICUs, it's very, very hard. It's very hard on the children, it's very hard on the parents. And I mean, it's very hard on the staff because you repeat, it's literally some children come in once a month, some every 6 weeks, some every 3 months. And I used to ask, isn't there something we can do to prevent these children from having to be admitted repetitively? And my answer has always been, well, some children just have worse immune systems, and some children just have more allergies, and there's nothing really you can do. You just have to treat them through it, and they'll grow up at the end of the day. And then I had my own children who turned out to be super allergic, full of all sorts of problems. So I started looking for different solutions myself. And this came across my path as a result of a friend of mine who is actually a psychologist and works in the field of ADD and ADHD. And we were working together, and she happened upon the SCIO via actually a medical practitioner who works with it, and told me about it and said, look, I've bought one of those machines, but I'm busy doing my D. Please just come and take it away. I'll sit with you for 2 hours and I'll explain how it works, but please just come and take it away. And that was my first exposure. And I sat for 2 hours and my mouth was hanging open. And I kept asking her, but you know, if you say it can do that, does it mean it can do this, that, and the other? And she'd say to me, I don't know. It's new. I don't know anything about it except that I want to use it to eliminate problems like allergies, because children with ADHD often have a lot of underlying food sensitivities. And we had a program in place where we would, by a process of elimination, try and figure out what they were allergic to, because your blood tests are so inaccurate with allergies. And here she had this machine that could actually identify all these allergies at the click of a button. Like an hour and a half later, you've got a list of everything that this person is sensitive to, and had then the ability to help reduce the sensitivities by a desensitization program. So that was her purpose with it. And well, I took the machine, and for 2 weeks, I couldn't put it down. And eventually I got sick because I worked so many hours on it. But it was just so fascinating that I couldn't leave it. And I had no training. It's quite complicated. So I had the manual on my left side, and it would say, press that button. I'd go, where's the button? Okay, let's press that button. And that was my start of the SCIO. Um, I then did the training, which at that point in time, that was 14 years ago, we still had international people come over to where we are, and we had the training here. And after the first training, you've got like a beginner's training. We started working with the SCIO. And I pretty soon realized that, for something that can do so much, to just use it for allergy identification would be a sin. Yeah. And I said to her, I appreciate that this is what you want to do, but for me, I need to do all of it. I need to just, it's just something in me that has to do all of it. So I then purchased my own machine, continued with the training, did my intermediate training, did my advanced training, all the while I was still working in a private practice. And it was an interesting time in my life because people would come in and they'd say, well, can it do this, that, and the other? And I'd say to them, listen, they say it can do this, that, or the other, but I really don't know whether that's the truth or not. So if you're willing to be my guinea pig, then let's try it out. And that was my start on the SCIO. So and maybe it's because I come from a medical background, and a very scientific background. I needed that confirmation. So I needed to see what was happening to people when I did the treatments. And I had the most amazing results. Almost from the very beginning, I had the most amazing results, things that left me speechless. Um, so over time, I learned to trust the SCIO, and I learned how it worked. And I stayed in private practice for a long time. I still have a lot of my old clients. And then when I started awakening spiritually, I started moving more to the spiritual side, because there's a large component on the SCIO for the development of the spiritual things and spiritual powers and clearing the paths. And, that became more my focus. And I shifted my practice more towards the emotional spiritual side. And then in the beginning of well, not quite the beginning, in April 2019, I found out that actually I was a twin. And so immediately I understood, that this was going to be part of my path forward, and that the SCIO was going to be one of the tools that we could develop and use to help twins to heal both as individuals, but also to help the connection and clear the blocks that are present in the connection, identify these things, give the feedback to people so they can work with it, see how they progress. It was just the most amazing journey. So Mikayla has been part of my life probably from, I must have had the SCIO for about a year when I met her. And she's always been so fascinated by this. And as a twin herself, we've been walking the twin road together. So as a twin herself, she realized the potential of what we were doing. And she's done her training on the SCIO, and she really focuses on the emotional, spiritual components and is fantastic in that line. So the two of us are working together.
Yeah, and I started off by actually being one of Ella's original clients, and I still am. My journey started more from a medical side. I was really battling to fall pregnant, had lots of miscarriages. All the medical doctors kept telling me that it's unexplained, and I just wanted to understand the reason why. And Ella was introduced to me by a family friend, and actually we've been walking that path together too, and I understood through working on the SCIO exactly what the cause of everything was, which really helped me just as a person understand it. We've been working through a lot of those things, but it just made all the difference in the world to me to understand where it came from. So just, I think I've been involved in this from both sides. I've always been incredibly passionate about it. Also, from a personal perspective, understanding just how it impacted medically for me. One of the most phenomenal things were when Ella told me the one day I had a specific virus that I'd never heard of before in my whole life. I went to my medical doctor to ask them to do a blood test for it. The doctor didn't really understand why on earth I would even speak about this. It's the Coxsackie virus. That's not a well-known virus. And they ended up picking it up in my blood tests. And because we were working on it quite early on, and picked it up so early, I actually had very mild symptoms. Some of my other work colleagues who got the same was down for more than a month. I think I was back at work within a week or two. So that was the first time I think it really hit me how powerful this is. And just from a medical perspective, seeing it identified medical doctors testing the same thing with blood tests, and just seeing the impact. And since then, I've really been hooked on learning more about it. And as Ella said, when I realized I was a twin also early on last year, I just knew that the SCIO was the perfect technology to help clear the blockages and do a lot of energy healing work with specifically twins to move us forward, clear blockages from an emotional and spiritual perspective, specifically to get us closer to union and what our true purpose is in this lifetime, and also in preparation for future lifetimes and clearing past lifetimes.
Very profound. The SCIO can do a lot. So gives us lots of questions to ask you guys about this. This is amazing. So then that brings us, you both mentioned you both had seen really incredible results with the SCIO in your own lives and in other people's lives. What I am screen sharing at this time a video picture of the SCIO. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you about the results you've seen. But I'm just curious, is there anything else we should show before we move on to the results and the remaining questions for the interview?
I think maybe we can just pop through the different screens.
Okay.
It's not all of them. We've just put a few screens on. The SCIO is a massive program. It's got layers on layers on layers. You can spend days going through the different layers on the SCIO. So we've just taken out a few of the screens just to show people this is what it looks like. So maybe we can just run through those screens.
Okay, fantastic. Mikayla, are you prepared to do that, or you want me to do it?
Yes,
Okay, there you
I'll
go.
just quickly switch to. There we go. So you'll see here that Ella will take us through the different screens, but as you can see at the top, this was me doing a healing on all divine feminines on earth standing in their own truth. So this is the client that we're referring to here. So
this is basically your place where you load your clients. There's a whole demographic panel. I know that there will be questions coming up on how the SCIO works over distance. And this is one of the pages where we can, sort of help people to understand where it comes from and how it works. So we'll come back to it at a later stage, but that's your demographic page. Let's go on to the next one. All right, that's the testing page. So the SCIO tests these just over 10,000 items in a period of approximately 3.5 to 4 minutes. So when it's testing, that's the screen that we're working on, and it gives you a whole lot of funny numbers and letters that probably means nothing to anyone. But when you're trained, you understand exactly what it tells, because that's the first thing that will tell you a lot about the client that you're working with. Okay, so the nice thing about this type of testing is, like Kay said in the beginning, the client has no influence on it, and I've got no influence on it. It's a very impartial test. It purely asks your body, are you reacting to this? Are you reacting to this? How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? And it puts it all together in a program for us after the testing, where our information comes in in a type of a bell curve. So we've got 3 deviations away from normal. 1 deviation obviously isn't so serious, 2 is more serious, and 3 is very serious. So the 3s are the first areas that we need to work on. And then it gives us subfiles, including things like the allergies, the emotions, diseases, all sorts of things like that. But the secret about the SCIO is being able to take all that information and putting it together in such a way that it makes sense to the client, and that it helps the client to identify the underlying problems, because our focus is we want to identify root causes. We want to work from the foundation up. It doesn't help to just work symptomatically. It's great because, and the SCIO is fantastic at working symptomatically. But essentially, at the end of the day, our focus is let's get to the foundation. Let's find the problems in the foundation so that we can rebuild and build a stronger foundation from there. Okay, but this is the starting point. Okay, so this is just a screen called the Nelson report. Once you've measured and loaded certain of your programs, it gives you just a quick overview of what it found. So if you just want to have a quick look, this is a good place to just have a quick look. In the twin situation, it just also gives us a wonderful place of understanding where the twin connection is at. Are people just totally unaware? Is there resistance to change? Is there a little bit of awareness? Is there good awareness? Is there a resistance to explore the self? So all of that comes in on one screen, and at a glance, you can see what's going on. Okay. Oh, that's one of our favorite screens. Those are emotions, and we've got a similar screen for neurotransmitters. So if you look at this, you can see spikes on the top, spikes on the bottom. What we're looking for in emotional balance is a more even distribution of it. We don't want to see any spikes on the top. We don't want to see any spikes on the bottom. So as you see it there, that was before it was rebalanced. When we rebalance these emotions and neurotransmitters, we recreate a more even distribution without the spikes on top and without the spikes in the bottom, which really helps people to emotionally stabilize and to be able to work from a more secure point emotionally.
Can you just pause for a moment? I have a question about what pieces are here because I could read all the other things from my laptop, but what do these little boxes say and what are they tracking on this screen?
You're talking about the boxes on top.
On top and then on the graph as well.
Okay, so those are just the names of the different emotions that it's measuring. So if you make there we go. Then
There
you
we
can
go.
there's psychic pain at 172, which is a high reading, denial at 170, and then let's just go to the bottom. So that spike in the bottom. Which is awe. That's an interesting emotion to get. And if you look at the distribution here, what you found on the top are your more acute emotions of the now. What you find in the bottom are your more chronic emotions. There's perfectionistic, compulsiveness. So it's a good way of being able to see where the rebalance needs to take place, and also we can rebalance on the screen.
Very helpful. Thank
One of the
you.
things that we also see often in twins specifically is the desire for things to be different. It's one of the ones that pops up in quite often.
Oh, wow. Anything else pop up quite often in twins?
Religious conflict is one that pops up quite a lot, and that links quite a bit to not necessarily religious anything linked to church per se, but often people that are in marriages, etc. So almost breaking out of what is perceived as the right thing from a 3D perspective. So that there's often a lot of internal battle around those kinds of things, specifically if people are in marriages with other karmics or soul partners.
I see a lot of resistance to change on this scale, particularly with twins, because sometimes you want change, but at the same time you're resistant to that change, because change is never easy. It's always something that's going to require some flexibility and some adaptation from the person that's making that change. So it's very interesting, because one of the most common things that I see is that there is a need for change, but at the same time, a resistance to change, which kind of leaves you between a rock and a hard place, doesn't it?
Very, 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 very. Oh man, this is wild and so very cool. I see lots of wonderful conversation and questions starting to spark in the chat. So thank you for sharing this. Were there other screens you wanted to pause and show at this point?
Yes, this is also quite a nice one.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
past life clearing screen.
Are you able to enlarge it so our viewers can see it a little better?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oops, now it's a bit big. Let me just go down one.
A little bit more, just one more, then we can see all of it.
There we go.
Okay, that's it. I think that should be fine. Okay, so unconscious reactivity is the place where we can ask questions, and questions can be answered with yes or no, and then unsure if it falls in the in-between category. So this works very similar to actually a lie detector test. It works on galvanic skin response. So it will send the person the frequency of the question. The person would have a galvanic skin response, which is reflected in the energy field picked up by the SCIO, and then comes back as a yes or a no answer, which is one of the most fantastic things that we have available on the SCIO, because often we are not sure about things ourselves. And these questions come from your higher self. The answers come from your higher self. It cuts out the ego self. So it really gives us what the higher self says about something. And we love this. So, for example, if we had to check on someone, is it a good day to do past life therapy, as was the case there? Is it for the greater good of all to do past life therapy on all divine feminines today? Then it would either say yes or no, or sometimes unsure. But those are basically the questions that you can ask. If you look underneath it, there's a little bit of, not quite so far down, just go back up.
Okay.
Okay, so just
There you go.
this is the screen where most of the emotional treatment takes place. So you'll see things like mental factors and emotion chart. You'll see STEM intelligence, open-mindedness, neuropeptide balances, emotional biological flow, stress reduction. So it's an amazing program. Yeah, my favorite by far.
So before we move forward, we do have some questions from very engaged audience members that seem appropriate to answer at this time, as opposed to waiting till the end. We will do Q&A at the end as well. But I wanted to make sure that we touched on this detail as we're talking about this. We have a question from someone whose name is No. The question is, how does this machine calibrate the energy of you versus your neighbor if it's working at a distance? And how is it able to connect directly to you as opposed to who knows whom else?
I think it's probably one of the most important questions to ask. The answer lies in the witnesses in consciousness that is available to who you are. So it works very much on a similar principle to astrology, where what identifies you as who you are is your name, your place of birth, and your date of birth. If you have your time, it's great, but a lot of people don't have the time of birth. So the three cosmic witnesses of your name, your date of birth, and your place of birth is what identifies you and what allows the SCIO to connect with you instead of your neighbor.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. And we'll get to more questions in a moment. I just want to thank everyone for being here and for joining in. If you're just joining in, this will make more sense if you're kind of watching it from the progression of the beginning to now. But if you've missed the beginning and you can't really go back, just hang tight. More answers are forthcoming as we continue. What other screens would you like to share with us?
I think let's just do the aura and chakra screens. Okay, so this is the aura and chakra cleansing screens. So this was a before picture. So you can see what the aura looked like before, and on the right hand side you can see what the chakras looked like before. And then after we rebalanced, if you can go down, Mikayla, then we can look at the chakras. Isn't that beautiful compared to the first time? And then if we go down a little bit more, that is the aura after it was rebalanced, which is also amazing compared to the first time.
So
Okay,
I just want to make sure we have this stated clearly for the record. The SCIO has the capacity to not only find you, diagnose you, and treat you, subtle energy body, emotional body, and spiritual body at the same time. Do I have this right?
and 100%
100%.
correct.
Amazing.
And what you can also do is often all these things are very closely connected. We all know that emotional imbalances can cause physical imbalances, etc. And you can actually, with the SCIO, find what those links are to understand what is causing one or the other and how things link together. And as Ella said, as we focus on trying to get to the root of things, often finding those links back to where things started is one of the most critical things. And this is an amazing tool to actually do that.
Lovely. Yeah, this is really incredible. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Let's move forward.
Okay.
What else?
This is the last one.
Yeah,
This is
that's just
basically, yeah.
it's actually your, we call it the scalar program. So what it looks is, it looks at all your chakras, and it just aligns the chakras and connects the spin of the chakras. So once you've done the aura cleanse and you've aligned them there, you come over to this program. It makes sure that the alignment's right, and it rebalances the spin. It also has a function if you really see that there are certain chakras that are struggling, then you can do in the bottom, if you have a look at that, there's a lower chakra release, a middle chakra, and an upper chakra release. So if you see you struggling, you can go back to that and you can work on specific chakras, or you can just do the lower, the middle, and the upper as a whole.
Wow, beautiful. Okay.
I think
And
that's it.
those, yeah, that was the screens we wanted to share. There are quite a
Uh,
few more, but we would be busy the whole night if we shared everything.
That's all right. This has been wonderful. I love seeing all of that because it really provides an overview that is just detailed enough to help us understand what's happening with the machine, how it's working, and what it can do, which is basically what we needed here. So let's move on. What kind of results have you seen with the SCIO's work since the SCIO has the capacity to not just diagnose but also treat? What have been the end results that you guys have seen?
Mhm. So, Kay, the first thing I want to say with that is that the SKU is not perfect. Uh, One mustn't think that it's the only healing modality and that it's the only thing that can do certain things. But let me tell you, it's pretty amazing. The things that I've seen over the years that I've worked have really uh, kind of stretched my mind. So let's start on a few physical things. So I'll tell you about a few physical patients of mine, and then we'll move over to the other side of it. So I had, in my very early days of SKUs, people with high cholesterol. I had a specific guy that came to me with high cholesterol. And before he came to see me, he went to his doctor and he had a cholesterol test. And he came to me because I told him that I could actually, we call it zap, I could actually zap this cholesterol and we could break it up for him. And that reduces your cardiac risk dramatically. So he came to see me. We did the treatment. He didn't tell me, but the next day he went back to the doctor and he said, "Please, can you test my cholesterol again?" The results came back and it was a full 3 points lower than the first time that he tested it. So he asked his doctor, "Well, how do you explain this? How can my cholesterol in a day's time go from that to that?" And the doctor just shook his head and he said, "Well, I suppose the lab was wrong." So that was one of my first experiences. So I loved to test these things and to see, what happened. So I had a lot of medical confirmations like those for the effectiveness of the therapies. So I had one of my very favorite clients was a young man. He was 36 when he came to me with acute leukemia, and they gave him 4 months to live. And I said to him, "Look, I'm happy to work. I can't guarantee what your results will be, but I need to see you twice a week." The sessions were about 3 hours at a time, so that was quite a long session. And we first have to figure out what's at the root of this. And, you know, we do all the physical treatments, but at the root of his leukemia really was a very big emotional problem. It actually made him sick. And as we spent time together and while we were working on the physical things, we spoke about the emotional things and we started resolving those things. We used the SKU to help us to resolve those underlying issues. And I saw him in April of that year for the first time. In October, he had his first clear blood test. And he kept going back. He went back in November, he went back in December, he went back in January. He kept coming back clear. And eventually I said to him, "Listen, you've got to stop testing now because there's no point in it." And he is happily married and has a little boy at this point in time. And it was just one of my very favorite cases. Then, what else can I tell you on the physical side? I had a little baby that was admitted to hospital regularly. He was about 17 months old for respiratory problems. And the father phoned me one day. He said, "Listen, I'm on my way to hospital, but I could hear the child in the background. But please, can you SCIO us?" And I said to him, "Well, I'm happy to do it, but you need to get to hospital because that child sounds terrible." So they got to hospital. The child was admitted. It was put into an oxygen tent in those days. And they said to him, "It's going to take at least 10 days in the tent and then probably another 4 or 5 days out of it before this child will be happy to go home." So at the same time that they were there, I did the treatment on this child. And my experience with the SCIO is around about day 3 after the treatment is your optimum day after therapy, because it takes about 3 days for the energy system to integrate everything that we're doing. So I treated that little one on, I think, the Friday. And by Monday, he was discharged and he went home. They don't know what
Wow.
they don't know what happened. He was just getting better so quickly and he was fine and he went home. And the wonderful thing about that was we were able to identify on the SCIO where the problem was. They had a nebulizer at home, and I kept on picking up something called Pseudomonas. And I said to the father, "Do you ever sterilize this nebulizer, or do you just use it from one illness to the next illness?" So what was happening is they were never cleaning it and sterilizing it, and they were kind of reinfecting this child because this pseudomonas was growing in the tube of the nebulizer. And they just didn't think about that. It was a young couple. They didn't think about that. And once they sorted that out and I explained to them how to deal with it, that was the end of the child's illness.
Wow. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, so those are amazing things. And to move on to the emotional side, I can give you the example of someone who was absolutely suicidally depressed. And I did SCIO her 3 times. I did it 3 days apart. And after the first SCIO, she was decidedly better. After the second and the third one, we were on our way, and after that, we could start working with the underlying problems. But it literally took her, it saved her life. She up until this day, she says it saved her life. Um,
Wow.
so that was a wonderful experience. Um, I can tell you about an elderly lady. Well, she's not elderly, but she was in her 60s and she came to see me, and her emotions were so up and down. She said she's worried she's going to lose her second husband because she just never knows what she's going to be like when she wakes up in the morning. One day she feels like this, the next day she feels like that, and it's impossible to manage. And we looked at it and we were able to identify that she had just about zero lithium in her system. And lithium is our mood stabilizer. It's a mineral, but it's our mood stabilizer. And we got some lithium for her. And about 3 days later, she phoned me and she was crying on the phone. And I thought, oh my goodness, what did I do now? And when she was able to speak, she said to me, "I just want to say thank you very much because I'm 64 and for the first time in my life, I feel the same when I wake up today as I feel when I wake up tomorrow. I go to bed the same way that I woke up in the morning."
Mm.
Imagine she struggled for 64 years before she found a solution, and it was such a simple solution. It wasn't difficult at all.
Wow.
So that was awesome.
Really profound. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing these results.
Oh, another one that actually happened recently was with my mom. She just at the start of this year, when we as a country started going into lockdown, I suppose it could have been part of the stress, everything, but she had a complete breakdown, went into seizures, and was taken into hospital. And my immediate reaction uh, was to give Ella a call and say, we need to understand from a SCIO perspective what is wrong and see how much we can do to help. And with her medical background, and because it was a physical breakdown that she had, she jumped right in and started working on her. And in the next day or two in hospital, the doctors, she started stabilizing, could actually start speaking, and the doctors ended up never really being able to pinpoint what was wrong with her, because a lot of the treatment started working through, and she was released also within, I think it was 3 days, if I'm not wrong. So that was another case that, for me personally, was really impactful. The other one, more from a spiritual perspective, that was quite phenomenal, is when we started working on the twins. Uh, I worked quite closely on Ella and her twin, and they hadn't had contact for many, many, many years. And within, I think it was 3 SCIOs that we did on the twin connection between them, they actually made physical contact, I think, after not having contact for quite a few years at all. So that for me was really the start of seeing how impactful that was. And since then, we've been working with quite a few different twins, and just seeing how the energy shift and how, as individuals, the twins start mirroring each other more and more. And also when we have uh, some of our other soul sisters look at some of the twin rings and see how people are shifting as we do a lot more of the SCIO work. It's just, the results are just phenomenal.
So I'll just pause you right there with that reference point, because not everyone knows what the twin ring is. Twin ring healing and the twin ring connection was something that was brought to us by Charlotte Missenden of Happy Twins 1111. And she works with the twin ring and twin ring energy healing when she does SRTs for twins. The difference between doing twin ring healing and twin healing and just kind of standard spirit release therapy or energy healing work is that for people who are actually twin souls, you share a singular energy body between the two of you. It's not separate energy bodies, even though you are separate beings with free will. There is one energy that flows around you and connects the two of you at all times. And so, one of the things I remember we had discussed when we first met before I started working with you guys was that in the world of results among twins, was that you started to do work on the SCIO that could then be seen without, Charlotte or anyone else knowing that SCIO work had been done. They could see the change and the shift in the connecting energy between the two twins. Likewise, they would go and do work from a healing perspective, spirit release therapy, healing work, distance healing work. You guys wouldn't know that it had been done, but then you would go and test, diagnose, and look at things in the SCIO between twins, only to see that something had been shifted. You could pick up the subtle energies had been shifted, moved, healed in the twin dynamic from the spirit release therapy work. So it's important to kind of make sure, because we're talking about healing and technology, and that not everyone knows about. So I really wanted to make sure to ground and anchor that point, that the kind of work that the SCIO can do is something that can be picked up and seen by other energy healers remotely as well. Are there other results that you've seen with twins specifically and from a distance that can help people really grasp the impact and gravity of the work the SCIO is capable of?
Mm. If I can use a recent example, I've got a certain twin couple that I've been working with for quite a while, and they went through a very, very difficult patch where I actually thought, oh my goodness, I hope we're going to be able to clear enough to allow them to go on. And, the most amazing thing happened. We were able to clear that, and then we are doing fusions on them, and it is amazing how they are mirroring each other. this lady said to me the other day, she said, you know, I'm sounding like him now, and he's sounding like me now. And it's like, and this is on a 3D level, you know, this is not on a 5D level. He sounds like me and I sound like him. And there's more and more of his characteristics that I'm displaying, and there's more of my characteristics that he's displaying. So it was the most fantastic thing to hear, because the fusion is meant to draw these two individuals towards that shared energy body so that they can become one with that shared energy body again. And I mean, it was just the most amazing thing for me to see. I've also had, just to come back to your example that you said, Kay, where we can see things on the SCIO when other healings are done, and we can do things on the SCIO and it's picked up by other healings. But I've recently had someone who did some energy clearing, specifically karmic work, because there was specific karmic issues that came up. And the difference on the SCIO was like day and night. When I did the one before the karmic clearing, it it had a certain profile. After the karmic clearing, it almost didn't look like the same person. It was like two different people. Far more stable, much less underlying problems. So it's the diagnostic side of the SCIO is amazing, because we could identify on the SCIO that there was karmic work that needed to be done. So, and then this person could go and have in-depth karmic work done, and we could remeasure the results to see what was happening, all the while stabilizing things on the SCIO and allowing for that change to be integrated. Because quite often with energy work, people struggle to integrate. It's very hard for them to integrate, and particularly in the twin situation, where quite often um, the DMs are not as awake as the DFs, and I'm not. I'm just saying in a general sense. I know that there are some very wonderful DMs out there that are quite the opposite, but in general, most of the DFs are more awakened than the DMs, and they are busy pulling those DMs in. And on the SCIO, when we work with both individually, and then we work with the connection as a patient, if you can call it that, you can clearly see. And Mikayla, may I use you as an example? Are you all right with that?
Definitely. Yeah, you can definitely use me as an example.
I work with Mikayla individually, I work with her twin individually, and I work with a connection. And her twin was very resistant to anything that had to do with spirituality. He didn't really want to know anything about spirituality. And there were a lot of past life blockages that we were able to clear on the SCIO, both on her side and on his side. And since we've done all those clearings, she's had a couple of the most amazing conversations with him, where in the past he would have headed for the hills if she had that type of conversation with him. But because of the clearings we've done and the trauma we've cleared around it and the past life traumas we've cleared, he was so open, and there was no running. He was quite okay with it. He didn't have like a major response to it, but there was no running. And the more we work with that, the more we can see the changes taking place, and the more involved he's becoming in the spiritual world. Um, and not because of anything other than what is happening on the SCIO, because that's the only thing that we are doing with him. We've had some SRT, we've done some
Yeah.
SRT with him as well. But other than that, mainly we've done SCIO work with him. Is there anything that you want to add, Mikayla?
I think one of the things that we've spoken about often is on the individual SKUs, when you look at my own and is we mirror each other. So for instance, he's got a foot injury, and that often picks up on my individual SKU. So just how closely the energies have gotten over probably the last year, where you can clearly, if Ella works on both of us in the same week, you can pick up things that from a physical or emotional perspective, I know is my energies, you can pick up on his side and the other way around. And that obviously when we do it as a connection, you'd expect to see more of that because it's both energies combined as one. But when I saw how profound it was, is when it picked up in all three of the different SKUs, the same energies. And it was just, you could almost start seeing us all becoming one.
Are you there?
And then my internet was up to, where did I fall off?
The last thing I heard was all becoming one.
Yeah, I think that was basically the point that I wanted to make, that it was just, it's really becoming closer and closer, and as Ella said, really mirroring each other more and more. But the amazing part is that it's on the individual SKUs where she's doing us as two separate people, where it's also mirroring so closely.
Beautiful.
Even the physical things are mirroring, so, and that
Yes.
it wasn't like that in the beginning. So in the beginning, it was two very distinct individuals and then a connection. Whereas now there is absolute harmony between the two individuals and the connection, which is amazing.
Yeah, I must admit, in the last week, I'd actually worked on both of us as individuals, and that one picture we showed earlier where it shows your different chakras, it looked exactly the same for both individuals. And I think just me doing it for ourselves was really, I normally don't work on myself, but that was just phenomenal seeing it actually. I had to go back and look at the pictures that I took of the two to make sure that I wasn't mistaken, but they were exactly the same.
Amazing. Amazing. So I'm going to link here for everyone how you can reach out to Mikayla and Ella to do some SCIO work. And while I set that link up, I want to just kind of address what some of the critics say about the SCIO and the academic who developed it. I mean, it just sounds like the kind of device and system for healing and protocol that you'd find lots of people kind of poking holes in on a site like Quackwatch, or they would call it a pseudoscience. What have the critics had to say?
Yeah, I'm afraid it's been called a pseudoscience probably since the beginning. There's a lot of critical things coming from the medical profession, particularly. But as is the case with any form of energy work, actually, it's becoming better as time goes by. But when I started out with this SCIO, everybody thought I'd lost my marbles, literally. They said to me, well, you've lost your marbles now. How can you work with a device like that? But there was something in me that said, this is the thing to work with. So there's a lot of critical things on it. There's a lot of critical things on the developer, and he's a very emotional person. He really is. As is the case with a lot of very intelligent people, they sometimes are emotionally in a different place, and so he's very outspoken and not always taken well by the medical profession as a result of being so outspoken. But this device was designed for the medical profession. It was designed as a tool to help them. And, in my opinion, the proof of the pudding always is in the eating thereof. And not only people like myself, but I know many medical doctors in my country who actually use the device now and who have quite openly said to me, we could never do without it again, because it just, some of them only use it diagnostically, because the treatment takes time. This is not a quick treat. An individual session takes 2 hours, and a quick session takes 1 to 1.5 hours, and diagnostically, you can maybe get away with 45 minutes to an hour, but it's not a quick, there's no shortcuts that you can take in this. But so many of them say to me, we cannot do without it. And in my personal experience, because I was so medically orientated when I first started with it, I had to have medical proof. And I often say the universe knew that because it gave me medical proof. So I repetitively sent people, say, go and do a blood test. Let's see what this says. Go back to your doctor, ask about this. And I had all the confirmations that I needed in order for myself to be able to, with an open mind, say that I know that this machine works and I know that what it's saying is the truth. And then once again, I'm saying to you that it's not the alpha and the omega. It's not the only tool that there is. It's not the only way of doing things. But if you can operate this accurately, it is one of the most amazing tools that there is. So, whatever critics can say about it, you can't argue with the results. And for me, I read all of those things. I looked at all of those things. But my focus was I want to see that my patients get better. That was my focus. And as long as my patients get better, then I know whatever we're doing is working. And I can tell you with 100% clarity that my patients get better. There's no doubt about that. So I think the machine's proven itself and the technology has proven itself. And I'm only speaking for myself, I can't unfortunately speak for other people. But certainly in my practice, it's proven itself. And certainly the medical people that I work with have come back and said to me, we cannot actually work without this anymore.
Wow. That's a really profound testimony right there. So we have two more questions here, and then we'll jump into listener-generated Q&A. It's the thing that I really want to address here, since we're talking about the SCIO specifically and what it can do to help twins, is I want to get a sense of what kind of work the SCIO can do to help twins specifically, because we've had some people ask this already. It's probably one of the most commonly asked questions in the chat right now. Can you show us some of how the SCIO helps twins? Is there any report maybe you can show us or example? And then we'll get into, what's a good starting place if somebody wants to jump into SCIO work with the two of you for
Yes.
their twin connection. So
I will share an example of the report that we do when we do a twin connection SCIO. Let me just switch to correct. So this was one of Ella's clients, so she'll take us through some of the detail. But basically, one of the services we provide is a full SCIO on twin soul connection between the DM and the DF. And then based on everything we see, we pull together a report on a whole lot of different aspects, and we'll go through that now. And we also do treatment in the same session. So overall, it probably takes about 2 hours for the session, and then pulling the report together after the session. Ella, do you want to take us through some of the
Before we
detail?
go through the report, I just want to explain the twin flame soul union reports. So really what we want to do with this specific service is we want to identify where the blockages are to union. So what are the things that you need to work on to enable you to progress on that path to union? So once we can address those blockages, and awareness is an amazing thing. Once you become aware of it, you can actually start working with it. But without that awareness, you can be in the dark and you can grapple in this way and that way, but you don't necessarily know that whether you are focusing on the right thing. So this gives you a clear perspective of where the problem areas are and where you need to focus. And we do some of the treatments, and then where we feel that extra work is needed, we will say, maybe you need to do some SRT, or maybe we would recommend some regression work. But it really gives you a full picture. Okay, so let's go down. This is our emotional and spiritual profile. So it starts by telling you what the emotion is that the connection operates from. In this case, it was anger. And then we just explain a little bit about the anger. Then we look at awareness. In other words,
And are you
sorry.
just, I want to pause you real quick. Are you able to enlarge the screen a little bit more, please? Perfect. Thank
Is
you.
that too big
Okay.
now, or is that good?
Much better. Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay. So what we look at superconscious and conscious awareness, we have a look to see whether in the connection is there some awareness of who you are, where you come from, and what you are meant to be doing on this earth. And then we also have a look to see what is causing the blockage to that awareness. Okay. And quite often it will come up with affirmations to help remove those blockages, because awareness is the starting point. Without awareness, we can't really go anywhere. Okay, so then we look at significant emotions. This is within the connection. Remember, this is not necessarily one individual or another individual. This is in the combined energy field. That what you spoke about earlier, okay? You share and one energy field. So this is what comes up in your shared energy field, okay? So in this case, it was anger, a lack of power, guilt. So just go up to lack of power, please, Mikayla. So let's just take one of them. Okay. So then when we'll go into it in a little bit more detail so people do understand what we're doing. So this says in a twin relationship, it indicates that there's a feeling of a lack of power to change what needs to be changed to achieve that harmonious union on both levels. So it helps to remember that you always were and always will be one soul. Tap into your 5D connection, connect to that. It sustains you in the 3D, and it creates a template of how it's supposed to be that filters through to the 3D. And when you clear both the chakras, you can focus on energizing the solar plexus and the sacral chakras to increase those feelings of power. So, these are practical things that people can go out and do to help to reduce that blockage of the feeling of a lack of power. Okay, let's go on. You can still go down. Let's go to the next section. Okay. So then we look at important areas that the twin superconscious, when we talk about the superconscious, we talk about the higher self, okay? Highlighted to focus on during healing. So, for example, this is one that says, be prepared to take risks in order to stay true to yourself. So, we just go through that a little bit. Okay, let's go down. Let's see what else there is. Past and present distress, inability to express deep emotions. For example, there you can it can be very frustrating when either one of the twins can't express deep emotions, or whether within the connection you can't express deep emotions. So work on resolving the cause and keep connecting on a 5D level where these blockages just don't exist, because those only exist on a 3D level. What I really love, sometimes the SCIO comes up with a saying. It says that um, the inability to progress is really a delusion. It's not something that is real. And when you look at it and you see it on a 5D level, then you understand that if we can filter that through to the 3D, then would be able to remove all those blockages. Unfortunately, we're here to learn lessons, and that means that we have to do some of the work. But at least this gives you a template to see where the work lies that you have to do. Okay, so let's go down. Okay, you can go down some more. Okay, then there are messages from the subconscious or the superconscious, which really just says to you what you are saying, what your joint energy field is saying. What is it that you need to be aware of at this point in time? Okay, we can go down further. Okay. All right, there is a word scramble there, which also comes from the superconscious mind. And these words are words that are brought up because there's something about them that you need to focus on. So this is not something that we can tell someone, this is what it's saying, or that is what it's saying. This is something that as an individual, you need to meditate on and ask where it is. Ask your guides. Like for example, there is an issue with your father. So what is the issue with your father? What is it that needs to be cleared? and then work with that. Okay, so then we look at the therapies that we do for any specific day. So always when we start, we balance physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual factors. Everything that we find, we rebalance. Then we specifically start looking at neurotransmitters that and emotions so that we balance those two before we actually start doing any other therapies, because that creates a more solid foundation for us to work from. And then we, that profile that we saw in the beginning, that graph with the emotions, we work on that quite a lot. And those emotions that come up, anger, judgmental, rationalization, rejection, were things that came up on that profile that we needed to rebalance. Then we go and we say, what else would you like to have treated today? So it's literally a question that you ask. It's an unconscious choice. We call it an unconscious choice, and it can come up with very many different things. So in this case, it was rebalancing anger and aggression, building up the self image, a delusion of self, a tendency towards obsessive behavior that was rebalanced, emotional growth, insight, and creativity was stimulated, ascension stimulation done that helps to increase the vibrational level, higher purpose alignment was stimulated. That is one of the most important things with twins, because the first thing we need to remember is who we are, why we are here, and what the purpose of reconnecting with one another would be. Okay, past life therapy. We always ask the question, is it for the greater good of all to do past life therapy? If it says yes, then we work on that. In this case, we did resistance to change. And as you can see, it gives you the year, the most probable sex, the most probable occupation, continent, and then the emotional links, and then whether we were able to clear that or not. So if that one we were unable to clear, the anger, however, we were able to clear. So let's say, for example, resistance to change comes up and you can't clear it in the SCIO. That doesn't mean that you're not able to clear it. It just means you need to keep working on it and you will clear it. So we've had cases like this where we do 2 or 3 SCIOs, and then roundabout by the third one, we're able to clear whatever it was in the first one that we haven't been able to clear, because very deep-seated issues take more work and clear less easily than the more superficial issues.
And they often also appear in many lifetimes. So some
Yeah.
of the things, specifically resistance to change, anger, those kinds of things will often be carried from one lifetime to another. And it's like peeling layers of an onion. If you clear one lifetime, you can go deeper and deeper and clear it all the way to the root.
Mm. Okay, so then when we come to the end of the session, we always do an aura cleanse and sealing the auric field, and at the same time um, doing the chakras. If you just go a little bit down, Mikayla, then we can see. Oh, sorry, just hold a sec. I forgot. So after cleansing the aura, the following emotions appeared that need to be worked on from your side. So these were things that we were unable to clear in this session. So it means those things need to be specifically worked on by the individual. It can also be worked on in a follow-up SCIO session. So, for example, rejection is often a theme with people that you need to peel the layers of the onion, as Cara says, so you can only do so much at any given point in time, because people can only cope with so much at any given point in time. If you try and do everything at once, then people fall apart because they actually can't cope with it. Okay, so then the chakras, we align them, we correct the spin of the chakras. As you can see, there's the picture on the left, what it was like beforehand, the one on the right, what it was like after the treatment. And then after we've done that, we do the scalotherapy, which is just correcting the spin. We do the polymorphic field, and then we do spiritual healing until we get a really good correction there. So then we just summarize a few points for people in terms of just starting points. So in this case, anger was really a theme. Um, then there seems to be quite a lot of past and present distress. So this needs to be cleared, and this can go all the way back to past life. So in this case, particularly SRT was an important thing that came up. There's some growth of the self that needs to take place. So whether you are in a place with your twin where you can tell him or her this or not, it doesn't matter, because whatever you do, whatever work you do within yourself, immediately impacts your twin. And the more you clear yourself, the more your twin will get to a place, because of that shared energy field, where he or she would then be able to start working on themselves. So people often say, but how do I do this for my twin? You do it for yourself. That's the starting point. And everything that comes up here, whether it's your stuff or whether it's your twin stuff, it really doesn't matter. If you can clear those things within yourself, you can clear it within the joint energy field. Okay, so there's a good sacral connection. Keep opening and connecting with that chakra. Do the same with your other chakras when you connect. And then there's definitely past life blockages in this SCIO. So past life regression would be great in assisting us to clear those blockages. Okay, and that's more or less what the report is about. It is a lot of information. It's a hefty report. You start reading it, and eventually at the end of the day, you have to read it again and again, just to integrate everything that is in there, and then take the time to work with the things that you can work with on your side, and then come back. Let's check, see where you're at, and then move forward from there.
Wow. So cool. As our listeners were tuning in, they were like, oh my gosh, there's so much accuracy here and there's so much depth. This is blowing me away. So I just want to highlight one or two things before we move into the last question, because we are going to move into listener generated Q&A now. The thing that you just showed us, the report that you just showed us, that report is not necessarily put together and generated by the system. The two of you do the readings, you get the information, and then you have to by hand type out this report for twins. Is this correct?
Indeed.
Yes, yeah, no, and it's also pulling together all the information. Obviously, given that there's so many different elements, you've got to take the time to actually link everything for the client in a comprehensive way. So with twins, we found that the easiest, and because there's such a lot of detail, it's easier to do it in a report format. With the individual SCIOs, Ella does a lot of one-on-one Zoom feedback sessions where there's more medical elements involved too. So they're different formats, and then often what you do is it's really nice at the start of everything to do a full session like this with a report to understand where you're at. And then if you want to do a few sessions in between where you do a lot more of the focusing on clearing the blockages and the quantum healing work, and not necessarily need the report every single time. You can do quite a lot of work without a detailed report, potentially do that every few months, or you don't have to do that often, see where you're at then. So you can also do all the work, get the same results without necessarily having to get the full report every time. So they're definitely different options, but yeah, it's all manually generated.
Amazing. So cool. All right. So let's dive into you guys' website. Um, so for those of you who have to jump off now, I totally get it. We've been here for some time. Many of you had the question, okay, I'm on their website. Where do I start? What do I do? So before we go all the way into user Q&A, I want to make sure to answer this question for people about, okay, so how do they start if they want to work with the SCIO? I will be linking the website underneath the video in the description box, as well as here in the chat. If you wanted to get started, and let's just say you told us the diagnostics that we would need to have in order, not the diagnostics, but the data we would need to have in order to book a healing with you guys. Let's just say I am someone who is, let's take it all the way around for the different types of twins that are here. Let's just say me and my twin haven't been in contact. We're no communication. It's been a long time. Where would I start? I'm going to go over here to services. Is that right?
I think, Kay, before you can go to services, let's click on services. But I think the starting point always would be you need confirmation that this is indeed your twin. So if you haven't had the confirmation that this is your twin, then my suggestion would be the starting point would be the twin check, the connection check. Okay.
And the reason this is important, I want to just intentionally pause here on this. It's not because you want to ditch the person simply because they're hurting your feelings if they're not your twin. If your heart's on the line, just because they're not your twin doesn't make the lesson and the learning and the growth disappear. You're doing this to understand what kind of energy body are we working with. Are we working with an energy body that has two human physical bodies inside of it? Or are we working with just your energy body? The
Mm.
reality is if someone's not your twin, that doesn't mean that the parts of you that are deeply enmeshed in the learning and the growth disappear just because you learn this person is not your twin. So I want to make sure to really highlight that point.
Mm. Yeah, so I think that really is an important thing. Then, if you look at things like the twin flame karmic cord check on the right hand side on top, one of the big things, if you haven't done any work on cords, is that it's very difficult to move forward if there are karmic cords that are holding you back. So if we need to move to the next step, then that would be my next step. Let's check, let's see if there are karmic cords, and let's remove whatever we can remove of those karmic cords, because that frees both of you up to be able to be more yourselves than any other place. And it also frees the connection up from any kind of hanging on type of energy as a result of the karmic cords. Okay, so that would be the number two thing that I would say. Then, very important is the twin flame soul union in the middle on top. So that is it's the one with the comprehensive report. It's the one we looked at just now, which really gives you, okay, this is where we work from. This is what we need to focus on. And I really would say that that's one of the most important places. Once you've done that, one can have a look at individual quantum healing. You can have a look at what does each individual twin need to focus on. It's right below that. Okay, just individual. Yeah, there we go. What does each individual twin need to work on at that given point in time? Then after that, I would say before we come to the we are one consciousness and the yes and no we'll explain to you just now, is that the quick, if you go down a little bit more. Okay, well, okay, so there's twin soul quick quantum healing. Okay, so that is the therapy Cara spoke about earlier, where it just says that we actually just we do the energy healing, we do the quantum healing, but we actually don't do the report. So it's a most amazing way of making progress. And after you've done that, one can go back and you can do another one with a report if you need to. But that is actually doing the work. The one with the report, you also do the work, but you have the report on top of it. But you don't need a report every time. This is the quantum healing, the healing side of the skill, which is fantastic to do. Then just on the, if you can go up again, Mikayla, on the yes and no testing. Okay, so on the yes and no testing, so sometimes people want to know what would be the most effective way for me to, for example, clear something like rejection. that comes up repetitively and the person's aware of it and they want to know how do we clear that the best. They've got some ideas. They go, okay, shall I do a journey with my guides? Shall I do regression therapy? Do I need to do inner child healing? Do I need to do shadow work? What would be the most effective one for me? And this is the place where you can get an answer to that. Also, Mikayla and I have done that extensively. If we have got specific things we need to discuss with our twins, we often check what would the best date be, what would the best week be. Is it best to contact via email? Is it best to contact via just a message? So it's an amazing way to actually get guidance on the things that you're not sure about. Then there's the birth time testing right on the bottom, um, especially in your line K. I think that birth time is an absolute essential thing. So many people know the name, the place of birth, the time of birth, the date of birth, but they don't know what time this person was born. And so here we can help you to narrow that down to kind of literally the minutes of when that person was born by using the yes or no answers to eliminate times. Okay. And then my very favorite one, if you just go back up, is the We Are One consciousness fusion. This is the most beautiful, beautiful therapy. And it rejoins and draws the two into the one energy field again. But it is important to do this once you've done a fair amount of clearing, because otherwise there's quite a lot of debris in the way, which makes this really difficult to do. The We Are One consciousness can be done on individuals. We confuse individuals with their own higher selves. And I always suggest that as a good idea as well, because first of all, the most important thing is for you to become one with yourself again, the true self, not, the ego self that we grow up with, but the true self. And then once we've done that, we can connect the two and we can join the two twins as one consciousness again. I've had such positive feedback about this. I've had the most amazing feedback where people really say, I can feel this person. I can feel him so much. I can feel his emotions. I can feel what's happening to him. I've even had people who can see what's happening. So, which I think is not always what you want, but it pulls you that close together. So it really is a beautiful therapy. It just the love that you feel for your twin is just so amazing. This is not always an easy journey. There's quite a lot of heartache on the road. And this to me is like the cherry on the cake at the end of the journey.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for walking us through the services and how they work and where to start. And let's just say, you are in separation. Could this twin flame soul union piece here, could it help you, or do you have to be in union to do that one?
No, this is actually specifically to get to a place of union. Now, remember when Mikayla told you in the beginning that I hadn't been in contact with my twin for 9 years, and I actually didn't have much of an intention of contacting him. I still thought, well, I've got plenty of my own things to sort out. So, I'm not going to contact him because I've got work to do first. And literally, after we did 2 of those specific SCIOs, the Twin Flame Soul Union SCIOs, it was just like things cleared and it opened up and we restored our contact on a 3D level. It was way earlier than I expected.
Wow, amazing. And then let's just say that dive us into this one, because I know if people have popped over to the shop tab here, they have seen that this particular consciousness fusion it's an investment, and I know the investment can be done in installments. We've talked about this, But I'm curious why. Why is this one such an investment? What is the labor behind it? The We Are One consciousness fusion, either with self or with your counterpart. What's the labor in this?
I think, Mikayla, would you like to answer that? Because we spoke about it just.
Yeah. So what we do here is because we really wanted to move together and actually settle deeply, and the fusion happens at the mental, physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual level. This is a treatment that we do for 33 days in a row. So it's consecutive. You don't break it at all. So basically, we work on whether you do it as an individual or on the connection for 33 days in a row. And it often takes between 45 minutes and an hour to get the connection up to a specific level. So when you start, you could have different readings where emotional could be at 45% and intellectual at 70%. So basically, what we want to see after our treatment is that at all five those levels, we see more than 100% correction. And we do that for, as we said, 33 days in a row. So it's quite a lot of labor that goes into it. And then what we also like to do throughout the process is connect again with the client to just say how we are seeing the progress going. What we have seen with clients, as Ella mentioned earlier, one of her clients went through a very, very rough patch with her twin, and you could clearly see that the fusion was really, really getting difficult. Whereas when they started, it actually flowed quite quickly. And then because of the tension and friction in the 3D, it became quite problematic. And some of the treatments that they then did was just to do a quick clearing. I believe there was some SRT done. And throughout they carried on with the fusion, but as soon as some of those clearings happened and some of the other blockages were removed, it just all flowed together better again. And you often see that it will correct very quickly, and then as the fusion gets closer and deeper, you may find that there are days when it's a little bit more difficult again and it takes longer. But yeah, it's quite a process, and we would like to work with the clients throughout this process and also keep them up to date on how it's flowing and how things are progressing, specifically when we see it's going really difficult, because then there may be other blockages that need some work.
Okay. Okay, very helpful. So there may be a block that needs some work when it starts to get difficult. Got it. But just to make sure I've got this and our audience got it, you work with a client in the consciousness fusion for 33 days in a row. You don't take weekends off, you don't take days off, you do it for 33 consecutive days.
Yes.
Monday,
Yeah.
Monday.
Yes. It's like breaking or forming a new habit where you
Wow.
have to consistently do it. I know a lot of people believe you can create new habits in 21 days, but for us, as a minimum 33 days, we've seen the best
Got
results
it.
using 33 days as a minimum.
Love it. Okay. And that's why that one is the investment that it is. And there are payment plans for it, correct?
Yes, indeed they are.
Okay.
If you go to the shop, it will
Yes.
indicate the payment plans for you, so it is all put out there.
Love it. Okay. Beautiful. All right, beloveds, I am super excited to open the floor to listener generated Q&A. I am going to invite all of you, if you have questions, to type them in. There are some questions that have already flown by. And Mikayla and Ella, I really just want to be mindful of your time. How many questions do you feel open to taking? How much longer do you want to go for? And I'll kind of manage the questions from there.
I suppose it depends on the questions, because some questions have longer answers and some not such long answers. So, I'm quite open to keep going for, let's say, another half an hour.
Okay.
Okay, what about you?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
And Kay, are you good time-wise, Kay?
I'm good to go time-wise. We can proceed.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. So we talked about how it calibrates to a client's information. Let's just say I don't have my person's birth time and I want to do twin work with you, or I don't have my own birth time and I want to work with you. How do we get it? Like, what do we do if I don't have birth time? I know you need birth, place, time, location, and my name in order to be able to work with me. Is there anything else you need?
I think we just need to correct that. We need name, place of birth, and date of birth. The time of birth is an optional thing. Obviously, it's great if you've got it, but if you don't have it, it's not something that we need. But most definitely, name, place of birth, date of birth.
Great. Great. Thank you. Okay, that's very helpful. And let's see. Let me find some other questions in here. If there are imbalances between my twin and I, we're not together, can this machine do the healing in both of us, or do we have to address it ourselves? That's from Ann Met Sorensen.
It definitely can work on both. Depending on how deep you want to go, we can work on the connection first to see and identify where a lot of the potential blockages are. And if you want to go even deeper than that, then you can also do it on the individuals. But similar to most healing that we do on different modalities, including SRT and regression journey work, when we work on one person, some of it, if not all of it, automatically flows through to our twin. And it's
Great.
similar with the SCIO work.
Beautiful. And then how does we have a question earlier, how does the SCIO balance the chakras? Does it send out electric or electromagnetic fields to correct accordingly?
Yeah. So remember, energy cannot be destroyed. It can be just changed from one form to another form. So when you've got a certain energy in a chakra, you first measure what is there, and then you send a correcting frequency to that chakra that helps that chakra to go back to the size, the energy flow that it's supposed to have. So it is literally using frequencies to correct what you find. So you're just changing the energy in the chakra from one energy to a different energy. And the SCIO measures that, and it corrects it by itself. We just tell it to do that, and it does it by itself.
Amazing. And so, can you touch a little bit more deeply on the list of things that you might find as out of balance in twin flame dynamics? Are there common themes that you've been seeing?
I've seen a lot of common themes, as I said, with resistance to change. That's something that comes up very, very regularly. Then there's another thing that comes up, and I kind of only ever see this with twins, and it is a real deep loneliness and feelings of isolation, and not being part of anything bigger than what you are. And when twins start moving into union, that thing totally disappears. So for me, it just indicates that it's like having lost one part of your soul and needing to have that reintegrated to the other part of your soul in order for you to be whole again. And it's the most amazing thing to see people move into union, and that whole thing just shifts. It just moves. There's a lot of past life issues that come up in twins, and this is not necessarily the same thing. But, you know, I think a lot of us have had shared past lives, and there are very often things that we need to clear on the past lives. That's a very definite common thread that comes up with twins, and also karmic issues. That's also a very common thread that comes up with twins as needing to be cleared. Um, yeah, then abandonment, interestingly enough, is the other emotion that very often comes up. And abandonment often has its roots in past life issues. You know, it's often not current, but it's a past life thing within twins. And so many twins where we've done past life regressions and those type of things have been able to say, oh, yes, I was with so and so in that past life, which is your twin, and he or she abandoned me or left me to die, or really sometimes quite terrible things that happen. And once you can clear that, then those kind of issues can totally remove, because if there's something like abandonment in any kind of connection, you can't trust the other person, because there's that constant fear of being abandoned again. So, you know, to me, those are sort of the most common things that I see. What do you see, Mikayla?
A lot of the things on the twins, specifically on the emotional profile, is often when the unconscious therapies come up and we let the unconscious choice come up naturally, is basically schizophrenic reunion to self, where it when you start treating that, it also brings the two twins closer together. I've basically seen that in most of the twin SCIOs that we've been doing recently. Identity conflict also comes up quite a bit, specifically with difficult 3D situations where people are still resisting a lot of the change. And especially at the start of a new awakening journey, there's a lot of that, and quite often linked in the unawakened partner, where things start coming up, and then a lot of delusion in the partner that's not as awake as the partner leading the journey. So those are things that I often pick up, and even within some of the twins that are already awake too, we often delude ourselves to some of the true realities that and what our true purposes are here as twins, and clearing a lot of that moves us into a space, I think, where we can all see more clearly what our path is. So those are things more in the emotional profile that I've seen quite a lot of.
Amazing.
Uh, Can I add something? There's just something I want to add on that question. Is, you know, as a collective, we go through phases. So a lot of that is reflected in what we see on the SCIO. So a while ago, there had been quite a lot of attacks on twins that have progressed quite far on their journey towards union. And it was so interesting because you could see the same dark cloud hang around the aura of, of all of those people. So it also helps us to identify what is happening in the collective, because we see it repetitively in the individual um, soul union SCIOs. So that was quite fascinating to me.
Wow. Fascinating. So that brings us to, let me just make a note because there is a question that nobody's asked that's important to ask, and in preparation for next week. The number one question we've seen asked in the chat, I think about a good 5 or 6 different people have asked, and some of them multiple times, is what if I don't want to do twin work right now, but I recognize the power of this. I'd really like to do one-on-one work. How can I one-on-one work with you? Where's that?
That's the individual quantum healing. So you can definitely work just on yourself, and that's a very powerful place to work, because even though you may not necessarily want to work on the twins, it will necessarily work through to them. So it's in the shop.
Okay, we'll let
So
this
that
load.
will include basically a lot of the physical elements too.
So here, individual quantum healing.
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
And
got it.
that's where the feedback is a Zoom, it's a 45-minute Zoom feedback session. So rather than receiving a report there, it is a one-on-one feedback session after doing that SCIO.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's also very powerful. And on this one, obviously, this can be done on anyone.
Okay, amazing.
There we go.
For twin or not, this is
Yes,
just,
yeah,
it's for any individual.
yeah. My mom, for instance, recently was treated. She's not a twin, as far as I know.
Amazing. Okay. Very cool. Appreciate that. And do I have to be there? Is another question that people have asked. Do I need to or do I need to be doing anything specific if I'm not physically in your presence or on a call with you? What happens after I book and how do things move
Mm.
from there?
You actually don't have to do anything specific. So you do the booking. The booking comes through to us. We do have about a 4-week turnaround period at the moment because we are quite busy. But then once we've done your SKU, whichever one it would be, we will either send report to you via email, or we will connect with you via email to organize your Zoom feedback session. So it just depends on what you're doing, but you don't really need to be doing anything. There's no need for you to sit still. There's no need for you to not scratch your nose if it's itching, which is something that a lot of people have asked me, can I scratch my nose if it's itching? So you really carry on with your life as normal, because your energy field goes with you wherever you go, whether you're sitting down, standing up, it just goes with you wherever you go. And that is what we're working on.
Beautiful. Thank you. Next question is from Lynn. She wants to know if the SCIO can assist with the healing and resolution of addiction issues. I'm not sure if she's talking chemical or behavioral, but let us know.
Certainly. I've worked quite extensively with addiction issues, both on a physical level and on an emotional level, with quite serious addictions. So, yes, it can definitely assist with that.
Beautiful. And let's just see what other questions are here. Question for preparation for next week. So, for those of you that don't know, next week on Monday at noon as well, so it's Monday, January 4th, we'll be doing a collective healing for the collective of twin souls on planet Earth. Can you just talk to us? You talked to us a little bit about how you work with an individual, but how do you find and include the inputs for the entire collective of twin souls? How does that work to heal them?
So, just to identify how do we work, any situation is just a collection of frequencies, really. So I can, for example, let me give you an example on the SKIO. My father is a farmer, and he had rabies on the farm, and it's virtually impossible to eradicate because it's it's mainly carried by jackal that go all over the farm, and this is over 1,000 hectares, so it's impossible to manage that. So we decided to put it on the SCIO. So we put the farm on as a patient, and I zapped the rabies. And within a week, and I think I had done about 2 or 3 sessions of zapping, but within a week, that was the end of it. We had no more rabies. So just like that, you can use any kind of situation and you can put that on the SKU as a patient, because it is simply a collection of frequencies that makes up that specific situation. So in this case, that is exactly what you are doing. You are talking about a collection of frequencies that you measure that makes up the situation, with the situation being your patient. And the divine feminines, all divine feminines on earth, um, just includes every single one of us and whatever that divine feminine brings to it. But obviously, in the work we do, it will give you trends. It will show you what is happening in the collective of divine feminines. So, and I don't know, Kay, I mean, I know you do a bit of work with that as well, but we see very common themes when we do the collective work compared to when we do the twin flame soul union skews and the individual skews. So you can see the reflections from the one to the other. Cara's done quite a lot of work on the collective. So can we, yeah, that, she's now not here to explain that. But Mikayla, you've also done quite a lot of work on the collective, haven't you?
I've specifically looked at, I've been doing on divine feminines versus divine masculines. I've looked at divine feminines in the southern hemisphere versus divine feminines in the northern hemisphere. So quite a lot of that to see how the energies are different, also looking at different waves of divine feminines. As we all know, we move in different waves. Different people are at different stages of awakening. So it is incredibly interesting to see that also at different times when it's a solstice, how the energies look versus when we have eclipses. It's really incredibly interesting. And also when you compare that to, for instance, some of Kay's collective feedbacks and some of the other people that we often listen to on YouTube, listen to readings where there's collective readings, it's incredibly interesting to see how everything overlays and links together. So yeah, I've been doing quite a lot of work on those, and it's also quite important for all of us as twins. The more we clear everybody's energies, the faster everybody moves forward. So a big part of my calling is to do healing on the collective specifically. So I work quite a lot on that, yes.
Mikayla, it's been interesting. We've had several conversations about this as I've seen different transits move through the sky astrologically for the twins. You have shared feedback with me that, there would be a rash of divine feminines coming in with a very specific kind of issue or challenge, and it would match up and align almost directly with what we were seeing happen astrologically. And I have found that very fascinating. So next week, Monday, January 4th, at noon Eastern time, if you happen to be on the eastern seaboard of the United States, it's the same time this broadcast began. Check a time zone converter for your local time. There will be a live collective healing so that you guys can have the opportunity to experience what kind of information comes through the SCIO for the collective and the way these two ladies are adjusting from a frequency perspective, what's going on in the collective to assist all of our greater healing and union with self, source, and others. So thank you, ladies, for being willing to do this next week. I'm going to do just a couple more questions here and then we'll wrap. What else is going on here? Do you guys have a certification method or classes that you're going to open to teach people how to do this work?
We have not looked at that at the moment yet, no, but it may be something that we look at in the future.
Good. Yeah, it's here. I mean, definitely there's interest.
Yeah. Yes. And obviously the more we can all move forward, the better.
Yeah. Okay. And then let me just see what we're going to do for last question. Oh, wow. Will the collective healing next week be effective even if we have to watch it later? We can't attend live.
Yes, so the energies will work through everyone.
if you're part of the collective, you're part of the collective, you know. So if
Yeah.
you return, and let's say we do the divine feminine next week, if you're a divine feminine, you return, that healing will work through to you. It doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter whether you're part of our session with UK or not. It anyway influences the whole of the collective.
Wow. Beautiful. All right. So I'm going to link here inside of the chat one last time for you guys to find their website. You can definitely do one-on-one work. If you want to do one-on-one work, you certainly can. I highly recommend it. One of the things in closing that I'll say that these two have done for every step of work that I've done with them is they didn't just kind of let me willy-nilly haul off on whatever healing journey I wanted to cherry pick from their website. For every single step of what went on in the healing that I did with them, they made sure to pause and ask my higher self, my counterpart's higher self, and then the superconscious that connects the two of us, is this going to be in the highest good in our connection at this time? And where there was a yes, these two definitely moved forward. And when there was a no, they reported back with recommendations for what the appropriate next step would be. So that's one of the features I really appreciated about working with them, is that they never let me and my ego about what I wanted to be happening in my connection get out in front of what was the highest good for me, my counterpart, and the good of all involved, everyone connected to us, our entire life systems and constellations surrounding us, because we are part of a larger fabric, each of us. And they always made sure that if I wanted to take a step that would facilitate healing or breakthrough or deeper connection, that it was really in service of the highest good. So Mikayla and Ella, I can't thank you enough for the work that you've done with me, that you're both doing for the collective, and for your willingness to share this breakthrough technology here on my channel. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us, Kay. It's really been lovely.
Been wonderful to be here.
So everyone, please hit the like button on your way out. If you're new, please subscribe, and definitely join us next Monday, January 4th, noon Eastern, 12 p.m. Eastern, for a live collective healing with the SCIO.